Coming up on Arirang News, President Moon Jae-in in his New Year's press conference says he's still confident there'll be progress in the nuclear talks between North Korea and the U.S. And he pledges to continue his drive to reform South Korea's prosecution and build a fairer economy. The U.S. takes China off its list of currency manipulators as they get ready to sign the first part of their trade deal. South Korea, however, is still on the currency manipulator watch list. And the South Korean movie Parasite is nominated for 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, a first for a Korean film and director. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. President Moon Jae-in in his New Year's press conference said the talks on North Korea's denuclearization will eventually turn out well. But he also said that there isn't much time left, especially with the U.S. about to go into election season. Chung Sye-kyun tells us more.
President Moon Jae-in remains confident that the talks with North Korea will turn positive, despite the regime having warned the South to stay out of the nuclear talks with the U.S. During his annual New Year's press conference, the president said despite the lack of progress seen on the denuclearization front, it is still too early to be pessimistic.
외교란 것은 눈에 보이는 부분보다 눈에 보이지 않는 부분들이 더 많이 있습니다. 남북 관계도 어려움을 겪고는 있지만 그러나 대화를 통해서 협력을 늘려나가려는 그런 노력들은 지금도 지속되고 있고 그리고 충분히 잘 될 수 있을 것이라고 저는 이 낙관적인 전망을 가지면서 추진해 나가고 있다는 말씀을 드립니다.
He added that the recent exchange, which included a birthday message from Trump to Kim, is a positive sign that underscores their commitment for negotiations. And he said the exchange also shows that the regime has not completely shut the doors to more talks and expressed his hope for more active inter-Korean cooperation to keep pace with the denuclearization process and help ease international sanctions. Admitting that there is a stalemate in talks between Pyongyang and Washington, the president said that the denuclearization talks are short on time.
미국이 지금 국내적으로도 지금 대선 국면에 접어들기 때문에 조금 더 시간이 흘러서 말하자면 대선이 본격적인 국면에 들어서게 되면 이제는 북미 대화를 위해서 이렇게 시간 자체를 마련하는 것이 이렇게 쉽지 않을 수 있습니다.
On the issue of diplomacy with Japan, President Moon said Seoul-Tokyo relations remain healthy, except for the issue of forced labor and export controls. And the most important part of seeking a solution on the issue of compensation for the forced Korean labor during Japanese colonial rule is coming up with a settlement that the victims can all agree on. Chung Sye-kyun, Arirang News.
And as expected, President Moon was asked many questions about his reform of the prosecution. He called on the prosecutor-general to take the lead in those efforts, saying there's still a long way to go. Park Hee-jun has the details.
Perhaps the most hotly discussed topic at President Moon Jae-in's press conference was his drive for prosecutorial reform. President Moon said Tuesday that the much-needed changes in the prosecution can only be completed when Prosecutor-General Yoon Sung-yeol takes the lead in such efforts.
그리고 검찰의 개혁은 검찰 스스로 우리가 주체라는 그런 인식을 가져주어야만 가능하고 또 검찰총장이 가장 앞장서 주어야만 수사관행뿐만 아니라 조직 문화의 변화까지 이끌어낼 수도 있다고 생각합니다.
President Moon added that the prosecution still has too much authority, despite the set of legislative bills that were passed the previous day, redistributing investigative rights between the prosecution and the police. He highlighted the need to continue to answer the public's demand for true reform. The president also noted the great contribution made by former Justice Minister Cho Guk, even with the scandal surrounding him and his family having led to severe national divide. Although apologetic to the public, he asked that they no longer fight over the issue and leave the judgment of his case to the courts. President Moon was optimistic toward the Korean economy. Despite various challenges both within and outside the country, the economy is expected to record a 2% growth rate for the past year. And its government will strive to make sure the public can feel the positive changes in their everyday life. President Moon also reiterated his commitment to fight real estate speculation. Since last year, he's been calling for tighter measures to stabilize the housing markets, leading to a pack of property regulations last month, including mortgage lending. He promised to continue such efforts so that people no longer feel challenged by the surging house prices.
정부는 지금의 대책이 뭔가 조금 쇼를 더했다라고 판단되면 또 보다 강력한 대책, 그게 끝없이 내놓을 것입니다.
Moon is now left with a little over 2 years as president. Although he says he will continue to do his best for the remainder of his term, he says he prefers to be forgotten afterwards. Asked what his plans are for after his presidency, he said he has put little thought into it, but plans to stay away from anything related to politics. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, President Moon is officially appointed as the country's new prime minister, six-term lawmaker Chung Sye-kyun. Chung has served as head of the ruling party and as National Assembly Speaker, and he replaces Korea's longest-serving PM, Lee Na-kyun. Chung's duties start immediately, with his official term having already begun at midnight this Tuesday. In his New Year's press conference, the president said he would give the new PM a greater administrative role and authority. It's a busy week of diplomacy for South Korea. Seoul's top officials are in the U.S., where they're due to meet with their counterparts and discuss bilateral issues, as well as North Korea. There'll also be another round of talks on sharing the costs of South Korea's defense. Kim Min-ji reports.
South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa arrived in San Francisco on Monday for talks with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. During their talks set for Tuesday local time, the top diplomats are expected to discuss ways to bring North Korea back to the negotiating table, as well as recent tensions in the Middle East. There's also speculation Washington may ask Seoul to join a U.S.-led initiative to safeguard the Strait of Hormuz near Iran. Upon arriving in San Francisco, Kang didn't take questions from reporters. But before she left for the U.S., she said the matter is under consideration and Seoul's decision would be in part based on her discussions with Pompeo.
The government has been reviewing the matter. I will listen to the thoughts of the U.S. and what they say about what we've been looking at. Then the content of our discussions will be taken into consideration when our government makes its decision.
And as part of efforts to facilitate progress on North Korea issues, Seoul's top nuclear envoy Lee Do-hun will be heading to Washington on Wednesday for talks with his U.S. counterpart Stephen Biegun, who doubles as the Deputy Secretary of State. The two officials will discuss the situation on the Korean Peninsula and ways to cooperate to achieve denuclearization. Lee and Biegun last spoke by phone on New Year's Day after North Korea threatened to showcase a new strategic weapon and take shocking actual action in protest over the stalled denuclearization talks. Over the weekend, the North said the talks could only resume when Washington fully accepts Pyongyang's demands and warned South Korea not to interfere in North Korea-U.S. matters. Meanwhile, also in Washington, South Korea and the U.S. will hold a fresh round of negotiations on defense cost sharing on Tuesday and Wednesday. The two sides failed to reach an agreement before the previous deal expired last year due to deep differences over the cost and scope of a new agreement. Speaking to reporters upon arrival, Seoul's chief negotiator Chung Eun-bo said the allies are in the process of narrowing their differences, but that they're still apart on how to reach a comprehensive deal. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
In other news, history is again being made by South Korean film director Bong Joon-ho and his highly acclaimed movie Parasite. It's racked up half a dozen Oscar nominations, including Best Picture and Best Director, becoming the first ever South Korean film to do so. Lee Min-sun reports.
Bong Joon-ho's black comedy Parasite made history once again on Monday, becoming the first South Korean film to earn nominations for the Academy Awards. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences announced on Monday the final list of nominations for the 2020 Oscars, with Parasite scooping an astonishing 6 nominations, including in the categories of Best Picture, Best Director, and Best International Feature Film. In the running against Parasite for Best Picture are movies including The Irishman, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and 1917. In the Best Director category, Bong will go head-to-head with legendary directors like Martin Scorsese and Quentin Tarantino. Other Oscars nominations for Parasite are Best Original Screenplay, Best Production Design, and Best Film Editing. Previously, South Korean films had been shortlisted for Oscar nominations but didn't make it to the final list. Parasite has been accumulating a long and prestigious list of awards, including the famed Palme d'Or at last year's Cannes Film Festival, where it made its world premiere. The eyes of Koreans around the world will be transfixed on the 92nd Academy Awards to see if Bong and his film can beat the competition and win at least one, but hopefully more, Oscars. The ceremony will be held on February 9th in Los Angeles. 이민선, 아리랑 뉴스.
The mysterious new pneumonia virus that sickened dozens of people in the Chinese city of Wuhan has been confirmed in Thailand. It's the first time the virus has been found outside China. Yoon Jung-min has the latest.
A Chinese tourist in Thailand is the first confirmed case of the new pneumonia virus outside China. The South China Morning Post says the 61-year-old female tourist from Wuhan has been receiving treatment at a hospital near Bangkok since last week. Thai health authorities say the traveler was confirmed to have had the virus on Sunday, but she's recovering now and is ready to return home. The authorities added they are confident they can control the situation. According to the report, 16 people who were sitting near the patient on the same flight were examined, and their results came up negative. The World Health Organization says it has been notified and they are working closely with Thai and Chinese officials. The WHO says its Director General is currently consulting with members of their emergency committee and could convene a meeting. In a press statement Monday, the WHO suggested there is a possibility the virus could spread beyond China. Experts say the outbreak may have been caused by a virus from the same family as SARS. So far, of the 41 confirmed patients with the new virus in Wuhan, 1 has died and 7 are in critical condition. In Hong Kong, 68 cases have been reported. All but 12 of those patients have been discharged from hospital. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
The United States has decided to no longer list China as a currency manipulator. The world's two biggest economies are getting ready to sign their Phase 1 trade deal on Wednesday. Kim Dami has the details.
The U.S. Treasury Department has officially removed China's designation as a currency manipulator a matter of days before the two countries finalize a Phase 1 trade deal. The Treasury released its long-delayed currency report on Monday, following its designation of Beijing as a currency manipulator in August last year, the first such designation in 25 years. The updated report noted that Beijing had made important commitments regarding its currency, the yuan, as part of the new trade agreement, and its value has appreciated since September. One pundit sees the decision as an attempt to make a correction since China only fulfilled one of the 3 criteria of a currency manipulator, and that the U.S. is using this as an opportunity to change its definition of a currency manipulation.
It also shows that United States is going back to the definition it had about currency manipulation so that they can apply the definition more evenly toward not only China, but all other of their trade partners.
Last month, the U.S. and China agreed on a partial trade deal that calls for Beijing to purchase up to $200 billion of American products over the next 2 years. Beijing also agreed to end the manipulation of its currency, the yuan. However, South Korea remains on Washington's monitoring list for currency manipulating countries, along with Germany, Japan, Malaysia, and Vietnam. A U.S. trading partner is named as a currency manipulator if it has a bilateral trade surplus of $20 billion or more with the U.S., a current account surplus of 2% or more of its GDP, and persistent one-sided intervention in foreign exchange markets. Kim Dami, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, global strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you for making time today.
Thank you for having me today. Good afternoon.
So the U.S. Treasury Department's removed China from the designation of China as a currency manipulator, and meanwhile the Chinese delegation have arrived in Washington for the signing of the Phase 1 trade deal. A lot going on right now. Tell us a bit about that and what you think global equities are going to do in the near term.
Sure. With those news, yesterday the Dow was up about 0.3%, and NASDAQ was up actually 1%. So a lot of the growth stocks seems to be doing quite well. Many are, though, a bit skeptical about exactly what the two nations are agreeing to, and also how they will reinforce those deals. Some people are saying that they're a bit pessimistic that a lot of the purchases agreement that China talked about, nothing really has come out in details yet. So everybody seems to be having some doubts in regards to the actual first phase deal signing. But the fact that Beijing is willing to crack down on the policies concerning the forced technology transfer seems to be a key factor, and it is going to be included somewhat. So we think that that is definitely positive news. We do expect that because of the strong market movement that we've seen in the last several days, that with the signing of the news, market might do some correction. However, though, in a medium to longer term basis, we think that this signing is going to be positive news for the global economic growth rate. And because of that, most of the corporate earnings should be bottoming out and show some growth in year 2020. So because of that, U.S. market as well as global equity market should continue to do well over this year's period.
All right, well, Korean stocks are also up on this news. Record highs recently for shares of Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. What's the story there?
Yes, as you said, KOSPI was up about 0.4% today. However, that is actually slightly much less than the 1% rise that we saw in the mid of the day. Kosdaq actually was down by about 0.08%. So pretty much very strong movement that we've seen in the SK Hynix and Samsung Electronics, the tech sector, the semiconductor sector seems to be taking somewhat of a breather. We do expect that the rising trend of the semiconductor sector of KOSPI should be continued in the future. But in terms of the percentage of rise would be probably much less than we saw last year. We think that the benefit of the global economic recovery should be not just for the semiconductor, but for other export-related sector as well. So we do expect some benefits to spill over to other sectors. We would like to recommend to focus on the fourth industrial revolution-related stocks, such as the electric car battery industries, as well as solar industries. We think that several of these fourth industrial revolution-related sector looks very attractive at the current point in time in Korea.
All right, well, we talked about the China currency manipulator removal from that list, but Korea is still on the watch list of possible currency manipulators. Experts say, though, China's removal will benefit the Korean economy. What's your view?
I think that it is possible. If you look at the Korean won, it appreciated as much to now 1156 territories. But we think that one appreciation might not be that strong in the future because right now the interest rate of Korea is about 1.7% versus U.S. interest rate is about 1.9%, so it's below that. Also, Korea is very heavily skewed towards the export-related sector, so we think that that should have some limitation in terms of the won appreciation. As for China, though, with these changes, we think that the renminbi appreciation should continue. Right now, it's at 6.8 renminbi to dollars. We think that it could further appreciate to as low as 6.3 in a longer-term basis. So in terms of the appreciation of currency, it should be much more strong for Chinese renminbi versus Korean won, which means that the export-related sector should be much more beneficial to Korean companies rather than Chinese companies.
All right, Mr. Yu, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing your insights.
Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, Microsoft is ending its support for its old Windows 7 operating system. Users will still be able to use their PCs with Windows 7, which was launched in 2009, but they'll no longer receive technical support or software and security updates. As a result, Microsoft says people still using Windows 7 will be at greater risk of falling foul of viruses and malware and advised them to upgrade their operating system. The company recommends using Windows 10 on a new PC instead of installing it on an older device. One of South Korea's main export industries is, of course, semiconductors. And one of the chemicals it uses a lot of is hydrogen peroxide. Now, hydrogen peroxide has been expensive to produce, but now South Korean researchers have found a way to make it much more quickly and cheaply. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
Hydrogen peroxide is one of the key materials in the chip-making industry. Fortunately, it has not been directly affected by Japan's curbs on exports of materials used in semiconductor production, because it could already be produced domestically. But manufacturing hydrogen peroxide is expensive and produces a polluting byproduct. To improve this, South Korean researchers at the Center for Nanoparticle Research at the Institute for Basic Science devised a new catalyst.
We have developed a new catalyst that can produce hydrogen peroxide very cheaply.
If the catalyst is put in water with oxygen, and if electricity is added, hydrogen peroxide is produced. Only 1 kilogram of this new catalyst can produce more than 340 kilograms of hydrogen peroxide a day. This is 8 times more efficient than the previous production process.
The process is very simple and this catalyst is solid matter. Hydrogen peroxide can be produced by pouring liquid and gas onto this, so it can be reused.
As the new catalyst is made by using cobalt, which is a much cheaper material, it is also 2,000 times cheaper than previous production method. And as no other byproduct is produced, it is environmentally friendly. The research team plans to commercialize this catalyst so that it can be used on an industrial scale. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
This coming Friday marks exactly 1 year since the South Korean government began its ambitious drive to establish a hydrogen-powered economy. From becoming more environmentally friendly to dominating the global market for hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, observers say South Korea is off to a good start. Cho Sung-min has this report.
1 year on from the start of South Korea's $320 million hydrogen economy drive last year, Korea's hydrogen cars have swept the global hydrogen vehicle market. During the January to October period last year, Korea's Hyundai Motor accounted for 60% of global sales of hydrogen vehicles, surpassing Japan's Toyota Motor and Honda Motor. As well as being exported to 19 countries around the world last year, Hyundai's popular hydrogen cars have also been seen on the streets of Seoul. Since last September, hydrogen taxis have taken over 20,000 people to their destinations, and old police buses will soon be replaced with hydrogen buses. Currently, there are 34 hydrogen charging stations in the country, far fewer than Japan and Germany, but Korea did build 20 charging stations in just 1 year, the most in the world. South Korea also accounts for 40% of the world's largest power generation market, fuel cells. The future of South Korea's hydrogen economy is expected to get only brighter on the back of government support and research and development. Last year, the South Korean government enacted the Hydrogen Economy Promotion and Hydrogen Safety Management Act, the world's first act related to the hydrogen economy. To further create an economically valuable hydrogen ecosystem, key materials for hydrogen cars and charging stations will continue to be localized at cheaper prices. With goal of increasing economic feasibility, Korea will actively carry out large-scale R&D and cooperate with potential global partners in the hydrogen economy such as Australia and the UAE. Cho Sung-min, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.